All right, straight up 1 o'clock. Let's get this comedic act rolling. I mean, this heated discussion rolling. I mean, this discussion on heating rolling. Today's class is in webinar format, so your camera's not active during this presentation. But if you, so I can't see you. I'm just sitting here entertaining myself this whole time. But if you can hear me, you're in the right place. You're good to go. Right now, you only have to attend to get the credit. Your time is being tracked by Trek, and they handle all the credits. It typically takes them about a week. There's nothing that we can do to speed up that process. It just happens through the state. So we will get rolling here. If you've got any questions or anything like that, it's hard for me sometimes to watch the chat and talk and use my hands at the same time. So you may just have to speak up if I'm not answering something that you type. So today we are going to be talking about the basics of heating systems. And just a heads up, we will record it, so it'll be available for anyone who wants to reference it later. I can send it to everybody here, or if you put your name and email in the chat, I'll know that you want a copy. Either way, I can get it to you. This is good for 1 credit through Trek, and I will submit the attendance thing here as soon as we get off. That's the first thing I do is go click and say you are here. I will check the participants roll later. You just might get an email in a little bit with an option to leave some feedback. We are always looking for feedback, so good, bad, or ugly, it doesn't make any difference. I'm too old to have my feelings hurt, but I am always looking to improve, okay? I'm sitting here trying to bring to you the basics of a heating system in a way that you won't fall asleep. So I inject my own brand of dad humor into this throughout the presentation. So you'll have to bear with me, but your feedback is appreciated. Sorry.
You gonna be okay?
Golly, I'm choking on some hot peanuts I just ate. There we go. Thank you. Now, who the heck am I? I'm just John Bolton, and I've started doing inspections back in 1998. Besides a degree in building construction, I've picked up a few trophies along the way, certifications and licenses. I've done over 12,000 various inspections throughout my career. I've helped train and develop inspectors across the country because I'm also a national speaker on inspection-related things. I've published a bunch of articles and even written 2 books. And I say all that stuff not to brag at all, just so you know where I'm coming from and maybe earn just a little bit of trust. So if later on when we get to the end here, you want to ask questions, I'll hang out all day. It doesn't make any difference to me. I'm on salary. Real quick here, we've got a bunch of classes coming up and anybody can join. They're always free and they're always worth CEs, so what's there to worry about? Here's a few of the classes we got coming up. I have already put in the chat some links. One of them is the one you see there. It's for classes. You click on that, follow the bouncing ball, and you can, take any of those things. There's another one in there for our regional manager, Lucas. He handles all things inspection. So if you're looking to to book an inspection or something, have an inspection related questions, he's the man to get a hold of there. He is your local rep. I'm actually down in Central Florida right now, born and raised here. It's where I am at right now. So if you really like this thing today, please tell your friends. We really appreciate that. If if you want to do this for your team or your office or whatever, get a hold of us. We can hook you up there as well. So before we get rolling, this class is sponsored by TLC Home Inspections. TLC is a multi-inspector firm It services Austin, San Antonio, Houston, all those surrounding areas. And these are some of the things that you get when you work with us. We have done we do over 6,000 inspections a year. And we know that you guys work 7 days a week. So we have somebody, like a live person, 7 days a week to answer the phone and schedule as well. We include industry leading warranties with every full home inspection. And we also provide Home Binder. Home Binder is really freaking cool. I like this thing. For the client, Home Binder is one of those, it's a single, simple, secure online platform for everything related with their home. It's like a digital filing cabinet. Clients can put their home's documents, their inspection reports, warranty informations, all that kind of stuff in there, and they receive maintenance reminders and appliance recall notifications, which is huge. You guys have no idea. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of recalled appliances for all kinds of reasons. So they get all that in there, plus the free concierge service. There's companies in there that can help them with all their moving and cable and phone and all that stuff. All those companies are vetted, but mind you, you don't have to use them. Okay, it's not any kind of requirement. It's just complimentary. It's free. So who wants to argue with free? For you guys, this is really, really cool because every message that goes out is sent to the client with your information. So we're marketing for you for free. It keeps you at the top of their mind. And there's also a repair pricer tool in there for all those deficiencies and stuff that are found in the report. Those are all researched to our geographical area, so it's going to be accurate. Now that price repair thing only goes out to you. It doesn't go out to the client. So you can use it. It doesn't cost you anything. If you don't, again, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Our reports are typically same day, right there. As long as the technology gods are on our side, you'll get it right then and there, shortly thereafter the inspection anyway. We do a 200% guarantee. So if you're not completely satisfied, not only are we going to do the inspection over again with somebody that you choose, but we're going to refund your money. So this takes away all the risk of trying us out. Here's some of the things that separate us from the competition. Free thermal imaging scan done on every inspection. Pretty cool. Most of our packages include foundation elevation readings. And with most of our packages, the irrigation systems are included, up to 12 zones. We do in-house termite, swimming pools, septic, and sewer scopes. And also, depending on the market you're in, we do mold and indoor air quality stuff too. And lastly, really, really quick, we do pay at close. Cool, right? Good stuff. All right, all right, all right. Like my friend Matthew McConaughey would say, today we're going to sweat right into heating systems. There's going to be a lot of information. Really, our goal today is to give you a good, solid background into heating systems. So to really absorb this experience, I need each of you to go set your thermostat right now up to 104. Okay, 104 while we do this thing. I'll wait for you. That was just a joke. It was just a joke. If you're getting up, I'm starting in right away with the dad joke humor, okay? We are going to talk about the basics of heating systems, how heating systems are classified, the various types of systems that we have, a lot of the common problems we see, and also we'll hit some maintenance stuff. These are all really cool things for you to know and honestly make you look like a rock star in front of your client. And that's really all that matters, right? This is what the inspector will inspect on an HVAC system. And when I say what they will inspect, it's using normal operating controls. Typically, that's the thermostat, right? That's what controls the system. Doing much more starts crossing that licensing line. You know what I mean? We're just dumb home inspectors. Uh, I remember I remember before I started doing home inspections, I wanted to do mirror inspections. I could like really see myself doing that. I told you they're going to come hot and heavy here. The inspector is going to describe the energy source. Okay, so what type of fuel is powering the system? It's usually electric or gas. Identify any potential safety concerns, report on how the system is performing, and then, of course, recommend further evaluation when that's needed. Things that exceed our licensing or knowledge level will simply actually demands that, right? For us to say, hey, this isn't working, and have the AC guy come evaluate for a repair. What is not included in the inspection? First of all, that's going to be most of the internal components. Okay. Home inspections are more of a visual, more of a non-invasive type thing, as you probably know. We don't take stuff apart. Geothermal and solar heating systems, those are systems that really fall outside of our scope. We do check them and make sure that they're functioning, that they're working. Okay. Underground fuel storage tanks. Obviously, we can't see what kind of condition those are in, the integrity of the metal tank, but those kind of systems are pretty old, and there's also a certain life expectancy on those. So we know that those things are at the end of their expected useful lives. And then HVAC systems that are in outbuildings, they can be inspected. Those are typically a little additional fee because it's more time and more liability, but that's not necessarily always included in those. So here's a good example of limitations and things that we can't expect. The inspector is not going to operate a heat pump system in the heating mode when it's hot outside. That's because of the potential to cause damage to the system. Refrigerants change state in order for the components to remove or dissipate heat, but the refrigerant can't do that outside of certain temperature range. That's also why AC contractors typically have multiple US licenses, because refrigerants change states. Anyway, 70 degrees is what the industry has set for that inspection standard. So when it gets above 70, we typically stop doing the heats in the heating mode. Most heating systems, you can describe them according to their category. Okay. And really, this is how we boil down the different variations of heating systems. There's the heat conveying medium. Okay. Whether it be conductive or radiant, like an in-floor water pipe heating system, or convective, like a forced air system. The fuel that they use, which, like we said, is usually going to be electric or gas, the nature of the heat, and the efficiency or capacity of the system. Now, in Texas, some of these things are not going to really apply to us much because we have such a warmer climate here. But any of y'all Yankee friends, that there's a whole lot of different other types of heating methods that are used versus what we generally see in Texas. Every once in a while, we run into one of those fuel or radiator type systems, but not very often. Now, most commonly in Texas, you're going to see a split forced air system. Okay. That's the most common type. It's a forced air system that distributes heat from a furnace throughout the house using ducts and vents. Pretty simple. And I'm going to say probably 95% of the time, that's what you're going to see. Now, we do see some radiant systems. Sorry. We do see some radiant systems. We see that a little bit, especially in like higher end homes, like Greg Oler's, some of those real high end homes like that.
Yeah.
Uh, you Northerners, you know what I'm talking about. Y'all grew up with those radiator systems. We just usually abandon them because they're about as good as a trapdoor in a canoe, and too dang heavy too. You will see a little bit of floor radiant heating systems. Those can also be installed in ceilings or wall panels too, but just something we don't see very often around Texas. Now, hot water baseboards and electric baseboards, these are a couple other types of, I guess you'd say, zone heaters. Okay. Hot water baseboards are also called hydronic heat. If Alex Trebek ever asks you or you want to impress your spouse, hydronic heat. And that uses hot water to heat a space or a certain area or a certain location of the house. And then, of course, electric baseboards, it's the same concept, just using electric instead of water. So generally in smaller spaces, it's a cheaper alternative to install a localized heat distribution type system. These systems can also they'll allow you to control and maintain different climates in a larger environment. Okay, instead of the entire house, you can do just certain areas. For instance, in the day you heat your family room area where you're spending time, and at night you concentrate on the bedroom area. So in that respect, it's a air quotes more efficient system because you're concentrating on areas where your people are. All right, so now the heat conveying medium. There's really two different heat conveying mediums that carry heat for us, and that's going to be air and water. Simple. The heat conveying medium is what carries the heat from the source to the area being heated. But we can also classify them by the fuel types. So we've got gas fired, wood burning, oil fired, multi fuel, electric, and even coal burning. Okay. You're not going to see that one very often anymore. But if for some reason your client has a house with a coal burning furnace, it's probably time for an upgrade, right? But let me show, I can't wait to show you this. I was in North Carolina not too long ago, and I saw something I have never seen in my life. Coal burning fireplaces. Seriously, check this out. They're like adolescent fireplaces. They're little, they're tiny little things. They're not very deep. They're less than a foot deep, actually. And back in the day, they were meant to spill. Okay. Along with the heat that spilled out of these was also carbon monoxide. That's one of the real big reasons we don't see them anymore. All those people use them no longer with us. Equipment can also be categorized by its fuel. Fuels like fuel, electricity, natural gas, wood, propane, kerosene, coal, and even pellets. Yes, pellets. There are furnace systems that are designed to be powered with pellets. Like a lot of you might be familiar with your backyard barbecue pellet grills. It's something like that, right? But as technology keeps developing, who knows? We might start seeing nuclear powered heating systems or something even worse. Like, who knows? We might have to pedal for our heat one of these days, right? That would be awful. Now we'll talk a little bit about what I would say in most of our markets is going to be either the most common or second most common type of heating fuel, and that's natural gas. Natural gas does not, in its natural state, have any color or smell, right? A lot of people think that, that sulfur smell, that rotten egg, nasty smell, that's not natural. It's actually added to the natural gas. And the reason why we do that is to help identify leaks. It's very important that we don't let carbon monoxide build up inside the house because that leads to a very long nap, which is very unproductive. And speaking of gas, does anybody know where you can still get gas for $1.50? Taco Bell. Okay.
All right.
I appreciate the laughs. Now, here is a cool little diagram of what a gas meter setup looks like. We've probably all seen them, and I'll talk a little bit about the different components here. The meter, typically located outside, right? Uh, it measures the volume, how much gas you're using. So the volume of that's entering the building, and of course the local gas company keeps track of that. So they know how much to charge you, right? The meter itself is owned by the gas company. Okay. Everything upstream is managed by the gas company. Everything downstream is the customer's responsibility. Okay. So there's your line in the sand, what the homeowner is responsible for and what the gas company is responsible for. Now, if you look here at this little diagram, you can see right here that we've got our regulator and our service line, and that comes from the utility company underground, right? So that's the responsibility of the gas company. And then we've got our fuel line, the fuel line into the building. And sometimes we will see the fuel line where it goes into the ground, like especially if there's a basement. Most of the time, they just enter right into the side of the house. There are a lot of questions that come up about this little thing right here. And can you see that? That little wire around the service line? Some people think it has something to do with grounding, and it's not a ground wire, it's a tracer wire. Not a grounding or a bonding, it's a tracer wire. So it helps the service company locate the underground pipe back to where it came from. Okay. So it's a maintenance-free item. You don't have to do anything with it, but that's what that is. Tracer wire. Now, when it comes to the gas meter, there are a few things that we take a look at. If you've ever seen an inspection report, sometimes you'll see this top one, rust. And why do we call out rust? Because it's galvanized pipe. The main reason is because it can damage the material and result in a leak. Especially if you do nothing, it cannot get better. It can only get worse. And they often develop into leaks, especially around the joints. So you'll see that pop up on reports. Very rare do we get damage to the meter itself, but you know, kids on riding lawnmowers, sometimes stuff happens. Something else we look at is inadequate access. Service techs have to be able to access the system, right? And it's one of those things that's in your yard. It's kind of ugly, and people put plants around them because they're trying to hide it. But that's not recommended, especially the thorny crap, right? It's not real fun to inspect a gas system that's surrounded by thorny bushes. Thorny bushes should ideally be placed in front of young girls' windows. Can I get an amen, dads?
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Seriously, though, it's important that you get to that shutoff valve if there's an emergency, right? And of course, gas leaks. That's where that whole smell thing comes into play. Anytime we're around gas appliances, if we smell leaking gas, that is definitely a cause for concern, right? Unless your mother-in-law smokes. It's just a joke. It's just a joke,
I
y'all.
got it. I got it.
All of these are things you could see on a report. Now, when it comes to gas leaks and things that are safety risks, those are things that we typically tell the homeowner right away. Now, it's our responsibility as an inspector, I believe. We're responsible to you and the buyer to maintain the integrity of the report, keep all that information between us. But when it comes to safety issues, we're going to make sure that those are taken care of ASAP. And if nothing else, notify the homeowner. If they're not there, we call you guys and say, you need to get somebody on this immediately. So just a little side note there. So the gas piping after the meter is the responsibility of the homeowner. The gas line does need to be properly supported and secured in places like attics and crawl spaces, above ceiling spaces. And typically, just generally speaking, every 6 feet or so is where we want to see some support for like those black iron pipes you see here. And if you look at that little arrow, that little thing there is called a drip leg or a sediment trap. We use the terms interchangeably. That is a requirement on uh, all gas systems and many appliances. There are some exceptions, but you'll see this a lot. Okay. And what that does is allow for sediment that is in the gas line to drop into that little drip leg or sediment trap before it goes into the appliance. Okay. These are often installed wrong. I mean, we see it all the time. They must be after the shutoff, okay, and as close to the appliance as possible. And then and they have to be in the right orientation as well. And it's I need to put some pictures in here of the proper orientation, but what you got right here is correct. The gas comes down and debris falls into that sediment trap, and it doesn't go into the little orifice thingy that lets regulates the gas going into an appliance. And something else to look at here. You have that yellow flex line that connects the rigid pipe to the unit. That's an appliance connector. Okay, it's connected to hard pipe right now, but sometimes that goes straight into a furnace cabinet or something like that, and it's got kind of air quotes sharp edge where it penetrates that cabinet and it vibrates, and over time it can damage the line. So you can imagine, the system running 8 hours a day, during the winter, all day long, all winter long, and that vibration and the rubbing and the expansion and contraction, it's eventually going to wear and can damage gas lines. So if you've ever seen, missing bushing, protective bushing, or some language like that, that's what they're talking about. So it's literally a 10-cent fix. Easy stuff. All right, now, one extremely important thing to note is that our gas lines, our gas systems must be bonded. Okay, bonded. The purpose of bonding is to eliminate voltage gradient. In other words, voltage going from a place that doesn't exist, or it does exist, to a place that doesn't. It's just a natural gradient. It wants to go that way. So if there is a lightning strike, okay, bonding will help limit the potential for the electricity to arc to metal gas lines. When that arc happens, you blow a hole in the gas line and you have a blowtorch, like a never-ending blowtorch. Now, you guys, do you know what to do if you ever find yourself on fire? Or maybe I should say, what not to do if you find yourself on fire? You don't go waving your arms in the air ever, okay? Because you right then and there, you could be arrested for waving a firearm in public and just get in even worse trouble.
40.
So you're going to see here on the far right bottom, there is the bonding clamp, typically near the electrical panel in the meter outside, right where it goes into the house is where you typically see it. And this is what it looks like out in the field. So there's a macro micro shot. I remember this. This was new construction back in 2017, but that's all it is a clamp that goes on there and bonds all these systems together to help reduce or eliminate voltage gradient. And in this diagram are all sorts of different gas appliances. As these, our systems continue to expand, adding new appliances and stuff like that, we start to look for ways to be able to do that more efficiently. So we don't always use rigid pipes. Okay, a lot of times you're going to see what they call CSST. CSST is corrugated stainless steel tubing. Corrugated stainless steel tubing. Okay. Actually, it looks like this. And one more side note, when getting an inspection, always make sure the gas service is on, please. Okay. If it's, if the house has it. Without it, we can't inspect the appliances that use it. Furnaces, water heaters, all that stuff. Can't do anything. So that would be your responsibility to make sure all the utilities are on for the inspection. Now, our gas shutoff valves. The main shutoff is typically located at the service meter, outside itself. The local shutoff should be installed adjacent to the appliance, so that way you can easily get to it in an emergency or to work on it. When service techs have to work on it. All right, so we talked a little bit about CSST. Here's some other information. There's a website there. It's a great resource to anybody who has more interest in CSST. We do get questions from clients and even agents because they've heard of like a friend or a family member that CSST is dangerous. It really got a bad rap. I'd say 10, 15 years ago because it was newer then and systems weren't bonded correctly. And it really kind of became a big deal when we started to see the lightning strikes that caught homes on fire, and of course the proliferation of news Everybody hears about them now. So it seemed like, back in the day, it was happening all the time, and it's just that it's reported more often because it is actually fairly rare. I think much things today are much better than they were yesteryear. Okay, there's your bond connection there. Now, when we talk about combustion, we're talking about gas combustion systems. This involves the burning of a fuel that produces heat energy. Okay, but we do need an adequate supply of air as well. Just like if you have a candle in a jar, if you cover the jar, the fire stops burning. So we'll talk a little bit here in a minute about some of the problems we have with our systems when we don't have enough air, where there's not an adequate supply of air. And if our if our combustion air is inadequate, what happens? We get carbon monoxide. And of course, that can be lethal. People go to sleep and never wake up. When you have things like cracked flues, chimney blockages, when exhaust hoods are oversized, when you have unvented heaters, combustion can't be complete. And you can actually get a backdraft. When you get the appliances backdrafting, bad things happen. Really bad things. If you have an attached garage or any fuel burning appliance in the house and you don't already have a CO detector, I highly, highly, highly recommend picking one up on your way home. Okay, highly recommend them. This is what they look like. They look just like a smoke detector, but they're CO, carbon monoxide detector. Those actually became codified in Florida in 08 and in Texas in 09. So codified meaning being in the code. It is building code to have those when you have fuel burning appliances and or an attached garage. Now, there are three main types of draft systems. You got your natural draft, the induced draft, and the forced draft system. Of course, the natural draft, that's pretty much gone out of style, pretty obsolete. It's very low efficiency. That's just something that burns and drafts, meaning exhausts naturally. You may occasionally see one maybe clinging to life in an older home, but not very often anymore. Induced draft furnaces are an upgrade where fans induce or pull a draft. Okay, it can help. It's not a huge efficiency upgrade or anything like that, but it can help. Often when you have a system like that, they're just too old and not worth throwing good money at it. For the most part, what you're going to see is a forced draft burner system. And with our forced draft systems, they're most, of course, gas, right? There's some oil burning furnaces, but the fans are before the motor. Okay, like in that picture on the right. Those are the most efficient. And the intent is that we utilize more of the fuel that's being provided to the system. It's much more efficient. Okay, now you'll notice there the AFUE. That's the annual fuel utilization efficiency ranking. The higher the ranking, the greater the amount of heat generated per the amount of energy used. Okay, the minimum AFUE allowed for newer furnaces and newly installed furnaces is going to be 78% or higher. So, since you were, I know, sitting there asking yourself, I wonder how we gauge the efficiency of heating systems. I read your minds, and and had a slide prepared. That's how we do it. By the way, what does your furnace and computer have in common? When you open Windows, they both lose efficiency. You're welcome. Now, backdrafting. This is when the combustion gases are not drafting or rising up through the chimney or the vent and out of the house, which means gases are spilling back into the house. Remember talking about the CO detection required in homes now, well, for the last 10 years. It's a very cheap early warning system because backdrafting, when that happens, you don't even know it, right? That is your audible alarm, the CO detector. So if you don't have that, you get the backdrafting and you may not ever notice it and you go to sleep and don't wake up type of thing. So those devices, those CO detectors, they have to be tested periodically, just like smoke detectors. That's why we do it on home inspections as well. We always test the smoke, test the CO detectors, and make sure everything is functioning. So, like I said, for your homework tonight, on your way home, pick up a CO detector if you don't already have one. If you do, you go home and test them and make sure that they're all working. Cool? So, what kind of things cause backdrafting? Typically, it's the exhaust is blocked, okay? Or there's a depressurization around that appliance, and that causes the exhaust to go the wrong direction into the house. So exhaust blockage, birds that get in there and nest, animals that fall in there and get stuck, something like that. They can be damaged from somebody working in the attic or on the roof. So if you get a new roof, you want to make sure, check those things, make sure it's functional, not damaged. I've also seen people put covers on old chimneys, during the summer and stuff like that. And then of course they forget when it's time to go start a fire. and we actually did that. We were staying in Maggie Valley, North Carolina one time. My mother-in-law used to have a cabin there, and Florida boy here was completely clueless, and we lit a fire and filled the house up with smoke. It was awful. We were never warned, and I was too stupid to to think about it, to look. Sometimes though, you get a flue that is improperly sized or improperly installed, and that could be the issue. Like I have a couple pictures here. So you've got a horizontal combo on the left there. If one is more powerful than the other, it just pushes it the wrong direction. It's also not sealed going into here, into that chimney. And of course, inside the chimney is a huge area, which means that area is filled with cold air because that's when we need the heat, right? So you got a huge column of cold air holding it down. So it takes a while for the heat to push that column of cold air up and out, which creates the same issue right here on that one on the right. There's a big, huge cold column of air, and you're trying to force all that hot gas up through something smaller, and it takes a while to push that volume, that weight up, and in the meantime, you get stuff spilling back into the house, and again, bad things happen. In a depressurization type situation, that's when there's a greater negative pressure outside of the appliance and causes the air to go the wrong direction. You could have something like a really big furnace next to a small water heater. Okay. I've seen them in small storage rooms or closets. stuff like that. And you put the big campfire next to the little campfire, and the big campfire is going to win. Make sense? In a case like that, you have to install makeup air. So often you'll see vents. Many times it's an upper vent and a lower vent. And if you ever been in an attic and there's just a pipe coming up into the attic, it's like, what is this all about? Well, all of a sudden it's introducing a whole new volume of air to that campfire, to that appliance. Um, you know what? This reminds me, and I also put a link in the chat. One time, we were doing a new construction inspection, and we this is $1 million plus house, and they had a Mac Daddy kitchen and a humongous exhaust hood. This exhaust hood was 1,200 CFM. It removes 1,200 cubic feet of air per minute, which is it's huge. This is in a kitchen. So what that thing is going to do is pull out 100% of the air in that area. If there was a fuel fired appliance in that kitchen, it would definitely cause them some issues. Right? The appliance needs the air, but it's this hood is sucking everything out. We actually use a hood. It's you hold it up over vents, and you can measure air moving in and out. There's a tiny little anemometer in there, and we use this hood and anemometer to actually measure the air and prove exactly what was happening in this $1 million plus house. And I made a video on it. It's pretty interesting. In the chat there, you'll see a little YouTube link, and that is a link to that video just to watch. It's because it's pretty cool stuff, and it doesn't require hard math. We explain it all for you. So you may have seen this type of deficiency pop up on an inspection at some point, right? Sometimes these are very inexpensive fixes. Sometimes they might be more difficult and more expensive, but either way, they're dangerous. In that $1 million plus home, they have to get some makeup air into this place, and it was kind of configured in a way that, well, number one, nobody wants a hole in the wall or a hole in the ceiling, but they were going to have to go through cabinets to get outside, and it wasn't pretty. But check out the video. Here is a cool example of how to check if your appliance is backdrafting. This is like one of the oldest ways in the book, but it works. So if you've got a match or a lighter or something like that, and you hold it right up in there, it should pull, right? If it's drafting properly, all the air is going past that, it's going to pull on that flame. Does that make sense? If it's not pulling that up, then there's a draft issue. Okay. Now you could also use a mirror. If you hold a mirror up there and it fogs, well, then the gas is going the wrong direction. Then it's collecting on that mirror. That's another cool party trick. All right, now we have electric heating systems. This is also very, very, very common. And this is just like a toaster, okay? Elements get hot, fan blows over them and delivers warm air to the space through ductwork. Simple stuff. The other type of electric is going to be a heat pump. Very, very common. They are very efficient, and they can use both a heat pump mode as well as a resistive heat mode like you just saw. They have both. Usually have both. They don't have to, but most often they do. They work by using a refrigerant to absorb and release heat energy through all you're doing is pressurizing and depressurizing the refrigerant to heat it up or cool it down. So when you pressurize it heats it up. When you depressurize it cools it down. In heat pump mode, it it's going to cost you less money for sure, and requires less maintenance, and will last you a lot longer. But how do you tell if you got one of these bad boys at a house? I will show you. The difference between a heat pump and a straight cool is what they call it. One way is at the thermostat. Okay, take a look at the thermostat, and if it has an auxiliary heat mode or an emergency heat mode, most likely that's going to be a heat pump system, unless somebody has installed the wrong type of thermostat. It's exactly what happened in my house that I'm living in. I have a heat pump thermostat and a straight cool system. It'll work, but it's so if an inspector labeled it that way, he'd be wrong. The more accurate way is to actually look at this photo right here. You see that? That's a reversing valve. Okay. In a heat pump, the refrigerant flows different directions depending on if you're in cooling or heating mode. That valve, all it does is redirect the flow of the refrigerant, and then the components pressurize or depressurize in order to heat or cool. Simple. That particular unit right there, you probably wouldn't be able to see because there'll be a panel over this. So a lot of times you can just look down through the top and you see that brass looking cigar. That is the reversing valve. Brass cigar, simple. Just like that brass cigar over there. And if you go up north, it's a lot colder and heat pumps aren't going to be as commonplace. Or if you're coming from up north and you're wondering why we have so many heat pumps, because they work here. They work in the south really well. But in extreme cold environments, they're not going to be as efficient. Okay. With the heat pump, that auxiliary or the emergency mode is like a secondary heating mode that's used when the temperature gets too low for the heat pump to work. The strips kick in. Okay, that is going to be a much higher amp draw. So in other words, it's going to cost you more, which means it's also not as efficient, but it works. Some disadvantages. Well, with refrigerants, you get the environmental concern thing, the ozone depletion stuff you've heard on the news. And that whole not very efficient thing in extreme environments, but that's about it. Now, one other type of system that we see occasionally is the geothermal system. These things work by moving temperature conducting fluid, okay, through an underground loop of pipes. So there's just a pump that moves this this fluid from the ground to the appliance. It can be a vertical loop or a horizontal loop, like you see in the pictures. I have heard from some of my friends there in Texas that certain neighborhoods, and I wrote this down in case you can verify or were wondering, but they said northeast side of Austin that they're seeing some of these systems. They said they've got whole neighborhoods that are being built on a grid of these things, you know, like this picture here. These are they can be very massive networks, okay, running through neighborhoods. And we were talking about it, and I heard that's where you guys might see some of those things. These aren't new either. Okay, they've been around for decades and decades. They're just not widely used because they're better in some areas than others, and those areas aren't nearly as plentiful. Now, here we have some common problems Okay, things that inspectors find out in the field. I can tell you hands down, first and foremost, maintenance or lack thereof. I should say lack of maintenance. Whether it doesn't matter whether it's gas or fuel or electric, you get coils that are nasty, filters that aren't getting changed, blowers that aren't being cleaned. Those are always an afterthought. You know, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, basically. And I will tell you, a lack of maintenance will absolutely affect how your comfort levels. Okay. It's also going to cost more and it's going to affect the longevity of that equipment. So when you get dirty and clogged filters, I can't tell you how important it is to keep those changed so you have proper airflow, keeps the system healthy, keeps your indoor environment healthy. Because when filters get dirty, they limit that airflow, which decreases the volume, right? You're not pumping as much into the rooms because you're restricting it. So check your furnace filters very regularly and replace them when they get dirty. This is simple stuff. So I've given you more homework, okay? The old days, it was like every 30 days, but those days are gone. Those filters are for the most part gone. Every 3 months or so is a decent rule of thumb. Keep an eye on yours, and you can adjust, accordingly. If you got a lot of pets, it may need to replace more often. If you're a single person in a house, you're not, it'll last longer. But lack of airflow is an issue that can that's caused by a number of ways. Some of the common problems associated with that proper airflow is and I know you've probably experienced it yourself, but I know you've heard somebody say it before. They have hot areas or cold areas in the house. Sometimes it's a humidity control issue. Sometimes you get really poor air quality because they're not changed and they're nasty and stuff grows on them. And it will cost you more because the system has to work harder. So a lack of airflow is huge, and it will come from your filters, coils, blower wheels. Those blower wheels are engineered with a certain angle, a certain distance apart, and to move so much air, so many CFM. And when they get clogged, they're not working properly. So cleaning the system is absolutely huge. Sometimes, actually, a lot of times, it's the doggone ductwork that's not installed right. Like we see improperly installed ductwork all the time. But anyway, I'd say lastly is going to be the thermostat. Placing the thermostat near the front door, the garage door, in a kitchen, or say a wall where the sun hits it, that's going to make the thermostat come on. It's going to call for whatever mode you have it set in, whether the house needs it or not. So look at this thermostat here. Right here. You know what happens to the air conditioner when they close the refrigerator door? It loses its cool, man. All right, let's check out some real genius installations here. This is funny stuff. Look at this. This is the thermostat's in a closet. This one's in a garage. Like the AC is never going to go off. And in another garage. Here, the cold air comes out. The thermostat says I'm satisfied and it shuts right off. This one, every time you cook, it's triggering it. And our last genius of the day Yes, that is outside. That was a functioning system. I inspected this, and it's actually not far from where I live right now. And it was just kind of funny. I thought maybe this was a joke. It wasn't. That's how I turned that system on. The funnier thing is, since it's not far from my house, it's right down the road here. I drive, yeah, I drive by it constantly. And I guess our client didn't buy it, and the person that did was a home inspector. I used to see his van out there. Thought it was kind of funny. All right, so a few more problems we see. Leaking or improperly connected ductwork. This is virtually an invisible problem unless your inspector is using an infrared camera. Okay, it's a waste of cold air, and it can cause condensation issues, of course. Improperly closed access panels or doors on the cabinet, like that guy has there. Um, a lot of these systems, when that door is not, that compartment door is not shut properly, there's a little switch and it will disengage the system and it won't function. So some of the older ones may not have had those. If that ever happens to you, your system won't come on. You can't figure it out. It's not a clogged condensate. Sometimes it's that door. It's not tight. It needs to be adjusted or something like that. Plus, when there's gaps, it's not sealed right. Well, what does it do? It sucks in contaminated air because it's not filtered from around it, wherever it is. If it's in the garage, now you're sucking auto fumes, gas from the mower, the ant killer, pesticide stuff you have sitting nearby. It ingests all that, sucks it in, and distributes it throughout the house. So big deal there. Now, burning smells, this is a typical problem. First time you go turning on your heater, it starts getting colder and it stinks. That's just dust bunnies burning off. Okay. It will typically go away after a few minutes, but that's all that is. Another issue is mold, environmental concerns. Okay. Moisture buildup is the result of poor insulation. You get condensation on the inside. You have unsealed penetrations, inadequate ductwork. It creates an ideal environment for mold to grow. Okay. If you smell something that just isn't right, follow your hunch. You're probably right, and recommend a further evaluation. Somebody that knows what they're doing, come take a look at it. The plenum is always a really good spot to check if you have concerns about fungal growth. You can a lot of the returns, you remove the filter and it's right there. You can look inside the return. You can look up at the coils. Not so much the supply plenum, but the return. You can look inside and of course keep that thing clean too. Oh gosh, I forgot about this. I literally recently had this inspection, and the occupant had cancer. They're actively going through treatment, and they had some air quality concerns. She had been through the surgery, and they called me to come out and take a look. And I put some pictures here. Okay, these were all found in her house, and an active cancer patient. Isn't that nasty? So all that stuff is potentially floating around the house, and she inhales it, and she's already immunocompromised. It can't get any better for her. Oh, look at this picture right here, this top middle one. This here is a smoke pen.
and you see the smoke rising. It's that white, looks like a white line, because the gap around here is sucking that smoke in. So it's ingesting the air, and this is in the attic. The air handler is in the attic. So it's ingesting everything that's up in the attic, whatever pesticides they're doing for silverfish and roaches and stuff like that. Actually, I am reminded our next class is on mold. So if you want to join us for that, please check that out. As far as maintenance, it's always beneficial to be proactive versus reactive. Okay. So change your filter, right? I think Amazon even has a program that they'll ship you one every couple months or 3 months, whatever it is. Check it out. Make sure you test your CO detectors and your smoke detectors while you're at it. Safety thing, right? Make sure that both your supply and your returns are clear and not blocked. No furniture in front of a return. When you limit the air coming in, you limit the air going out, you make the equipment struggle more. Lastly, annual tune-up services, they are a good idea. Okay, let professionals help you. That actually even reminds me, last winter, I called my heating contractor because we had family coming over, and I called him because the system stopped functioning. And of course he says, "How long's it been down?" I said, "About 2 weeks." And he's like, "Dude, why did you wait so long to call me?" And I'm like, "Dude, my in-laws are here and they plan on staying." Now, something that we're at the end here, but a lot of people ask how much an AC system is going to cost to replace. Keep in mind these numbers here, they're just national averages, something we pulled off of some website. I didn't give my source to tell you where I got it from. I don't remember. All right. It can be expensive anyway. Okay. Uh, I will always recommend getting more than one quote. Okay, that makes sense. But remember, cleaning and maintaining is going to cost you a whole lot less, and it's going to be a lot more affordable and help you maintain those systems, make them last longer. Cost as far as cost per ton, that's going to vary. You'll maybe an average around here is going to be about $2,000 per ton. Okay, could be a little more, could be a little less. So if you have a 4-ton, there's an $8,000 system right there. Okay, so maintenance is a lot less expensive than replacing whole systems. Ductwork, when it comes to replacing ductwork, I'd say you could be looking at a couple $100 per drop, maybe $250 per drop, and a drop is however many registers you see, on the ceiling. That's a drop. Okay, so you could easily be several $1,000s for a whole house right there if you have like an old defective one or something that hasn't been maintained, nasty ones. So the cleaner you keep your stuff, the better the equipment's going to run and the better your environment's going to be and all that good stuff. And this is right where we will bury this presentation. I really do appreciate you guys. I love you all air-conditionally. Feel free to use me as a bad comedian example. That way I won't be completely, totally useless. And if you want to ask any questions, I will do my bestest.